Roger Noble,
Here.
Georgia Smees. Here. Jane Henderson,
Here.
Teresa McDonald. Here. Absent Whiten Hat.
Me, I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Would anybody like to offer an opening prayer?
I would,
Teresa?
yes. Let's bow our heads and take a minute to thank and praise the Lord for the beautiful day. And thank and praise the Lord for the wonderful place where we are all so fortunate to live. And we want to acknowledge and pray for those in our community and in our world who are homeless, who may be struggling with a variety of issues, who may be hungry, and may we always open our hearts and our minds to those individuals and everyone around us. Amen.
So as usual, all our meeting minutes are on the tribal CSKT website and DNRC. Have you all had a chance to look at the agenda?
Yes. Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion to approve it. Mrs. Teresa?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the
Sorry.
March 9th agenda. I'll second.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, board members, there is one minor error that I have presented to you in the agenda. In between 8.11 and 8.2, we needed to have a public comment on that expenditure item there. My apologies. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay,
With that addition, I would make a motion to approve the agenda of March 9th, 2023. I'll second.
all in favor? Aye. Approved. Caroline, this one's on me, board business. Have you had a chance to read the minutes from the February 5th meeting? February 5th?
We have.
Is that the right date?
I think that should be the night.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I have reviewed the February 9th meeting minutes, and I would move that we accept them. And I would second that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I will second.
Oh, she made motion, okay.
Oh, I should speak up.
Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. It's been a long day. Have you had a chance to look at the February 23rd work meeting minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to adopt the minutes from February 23rd. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Teresa, second by George. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried. Item 4, DNRC update on database, 25 minutes. DNRC WRD Administrator Anna Packenham Stevenson.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today. Can the host please enable me to participate as a screen sharer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you try to share?
Yeah, 1 second, please.
If you can't, then I can involve you.
Still not working.
Okay.
I am now the host. Great, thank you. Presentation, share. And then slideshow. How about now? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Let me turn my volume up and just want to say, thank you all for your time on your agenda this afternoon, excuse me. I'm Anna Packenham Stevenson. I'm the Water Resources Division Administrator. I have the pleasure of working with a compact implementation team, which you work with on a more regular basis. And then also our Water Rights Bureau, Nate Ward, our Bureau Chief, is with me today as well. Our hope today is really to talk about the water rights database, the enhancements that need to be made in order to fulfill our statutory obligations, and just open up the dialogue for kind of the next steps for implementation. So I have a few slides just to lay the land, and then hopefully for the rest of the 20 minutes, we can talk and have some questions and answers. So again, thanks for the time, and please interrupt me if you have any questions or if there's problems with my audio or visual. Okay, so as you guys know, probably better than anyone at this point, the compact requires that the board have all the water rights changes and uses authorized by the board to be held and managed within our database in a format agreed by you all and the DNRC as well. Our database is pretty complicated. Over the last 5+ years, we spent millions of dollars updating our database so that on the back end, so the interface that our staff and your board staff will interface with are more user-friendly, work and provide the queries that we need to have happen. We've invested a significant amount of money in the database, and we're actually at this perfect time to take on this responsibility so that the board can also utilize the database in a way that is meaningful. So just by way of background, if it's helpful, we call our database the RIS. Some of our staff might call it the YRIS, but either way, that's what we call it affectionately. It's our water rights information system. Respect is the company that we've contracted with over multiple years to edit and modify our database, the software, the query system, all of those pieces to make it meet the DNRC's needs. And then because the needs of the board are going to be so distinct and different and have different requirements, this is the company that will continue to work with to meet your needs. This happens through the discovery sessions, development and enhancement. I have to say it's a huge undertaking to update and modify this database. And so eyes wide open, there's going to be a lot of work here. The way that it happens is first through a discovery session. This happens with the Respect company. They sit down with staff and talk about what are the board's database needs? What are your water rights going to look like? What is the functionality that you need? And so it's really kind of a listening session for respect to understand and truly get at what your needs are going to be. Then respect develops the software to develop those needs. There's this process of writing stories, which are detailed steps in order to do the type of work you need in the RIS and the changes for new appropriation and changes. So it's really kind of this writing session of what are all the steps that have to be gone through by staff to do the work that needs to be done in the database. To make sure that the enhancements and the work that Respect has done actually does what you need it to do. There's a lot of testing. So just before it goes live, having your staff work through it, making sure it has the functionality and has the outputs that are needed to make sure the software development is doing the work it needs. And then the enhancements are kind of collectively the additions to the RIS that allow you guys to do the work you need to do. So DNRC, we obviously are the owner and manager of the existing RIS. We have a constitutional mandate to do this. We have statutory mandate to maintain this system. So we're obviously going to be an active partner in this project planning. We're going to be there to provide technical support, obviously financing and coordination. And so when we think about our technical support for the board, we're there to train the board and the Office of Engineer staff on how to use the RIS to help participate in story development and testing. We're there to help you do that. We are obviously providing state funds for this enhancement process as a part of our state contribution. We have currently in House Bill 10 in front of the legislature right now, funding for this project to move forward so that we can fulfill our statutory obligations. And so we are on track to be able to pay for this effort. And then obviously, because this is the database we utilize for the other state-based water rights, and this will be the database that the board utilizes and then staff, we want to make sure that the development is compatible with the existing RIS. And so there's a lot of coordination that has to occur. So as testing needs to be done for the board and its staff, we'll also be having a test to make sure that any changes or modifications are tested on the state side as well. Please interrupt if I'm going too quickly or if you have any questions. I love interruptions. So for the board, it is obviously your authority. It's your right to administer water rights on the reservation. And so you guys will have to be the lead in that discovery and development and the enhancements in coordination with Respect and with DNRC to ensure the enhancements meet the needs and expectations of the board and your stakeholders. We would never presume to be that person or that lead there because it is yours, and we're certainly there to support. So you will lead the project in terms of making sure that the project is implemented and it meets your needs, obviously within the financial constraints. Obviously, you guys will be responsible for prioritizing your work and how it gets done, and you will drive story development, testing, and acceptance. This is kind of the process we've learned from working with Respect over the past 5+ years in terms of different projects, and we really want to see the board be in charge of how this works and its functionality. And so we'd love to see that role be maintained there. In terms of time commitment, we thought it would be really important to be eyes wide open on what it takes to develop and enhance databases. It takes active, consistent, and responsiveness between obviously our two entities and also the Respect contractor. They talk to us on a daily, weekly basis at different levels, and having that partnership with Respect is going to be critical. There's going to be, and we've developed development teams in our own project developments that consist of 2 to 4 members. And so we'd expect that to be consistent with what you guys are doing as well. And just again, our best guess on what the development workload would look like is, each member on the team spending about 8 hours per week to get it done. It does take a significant amount of workload. It's unfortunately, it's not a plug and chug. It's not just a flip of the switch and now it works. It does take that development work to make sure that it's meeting the needs of the board and reflecting kind of what's in the compact and in statute. So we're hopeful and we've talked about developing a draft charter to share with you all, the Office of the Engineer, to really be clear on roles and responsibilities and setting clear expectations. We will be giving this to you, I believe, soon thereafter this meeting. And then DNRC really has reached out and asked CSKT what role, if any, they want to play in that development of enhancements. Obviously, this is a strong collaborative partnership that we've had for a long time, and we just want to make sure that we maintain that. Obviously, all parties have a great contribution here. And then our request to you is we'd like to share the charter with you and then ask that you guys take action on it on the April 13th so that we can really get this work up and going. Like I said, working with respect, working over the multiple last few years on all the enhancements to our database, my only share of knowledge here is that the work and enhancements take a long time, and the sooner we can jump on it would be great. And even though we have the funding ask coming through this legislative session, DNRC is poised to start paying for this and getting those enhancement work done as soon as the board is ready, so that your database can be up and functional as soon as possible. So that's a quick overview of our thoughts in terms of enhancements for the database, and would love to spend the next few minutes, if you'd like, answer any questions you might have or identify any concerns.
Ms. Stevenson, this is Ken. You're saying charter. Is a charter what you're calling an MOU?
I believe, and Pela, please jump in here. The charter really is different than the MOU. It really outlines specific roles and responsibilities related to the respect contract and developing enhancements. It's for your consideration and modification. I don't believe staff, Pela, please jump in if you guys have shared that yet or not.
We have not shared it. We just have a draft that is ready to share, but it would outline, I mean, I think it would function similarly to how MOUs can function, in that it would describe what each party's role is very specifically on each of the different components that are needed to get us to the finish line.
So this is something that DNRC already uses as charter?
We've drafted similar charters for other programmatic relationships related to respect, and this parallels a similar process. But this is, yes, something that we have drafted and are ready to share based on our experience with other development work.
Thank you. Questions, anyone?
Do you have any estimation on time? How much time do you anticipate this will take?
Yeah, let me send that to Nate. He's been doing this work more intimately with our other enhancements.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. That's one of those questions that it's going to be really hard to put a definite answer on things. So as Anna highlighted, looking at probably an average of 8 hours per work week of staff time, per staff member. And so the more effort that we're putting in on a weekly basis, the quicker this is all going to go. And that's why we really wanted to bring to your attention the fact that, hey, this is going to be a lot of work. But if we're all, actively engaging and having good coordination, things can move a lot quicker. That has been something that we've really learned over time is that collaborative effort is really important.
I'll also add the compact program staff and then the Water Rights Bureau staff have kind of already identified the differences potentially between at a high level between what the current database does in terms of functionality versus what potentially would need to be changed. So they've done a lot of the front load work. What we've learned working with the contractor is developing the stories and spending time on clearly taking that kind of high level information and then building it out based on the needs of the board. That gives respect the opportunity to set a more definitive timeline on when the product will be delivered. So I think we're best guessing right now. And yeah, I don't know if Nate or Arnie
Yeah.
more on that.
And I think one of the things that's really gonna help inform the timeline question is the user stories, because obviously we've gone through a lot of work on our end with enhancing for DNRC purposes. I believe that there's probably going to be a lot of similarities. And so we may not have to reinvent the wheel with a lot of things that we're looking to do for the water rights under the compact. But the importance is developing those user stories, because those are really what are going to inform for respect. Hey, you can copy this procedure that already exists, or hey, this is slightly different and we're going to have to do something a little different. So I think there's going to be a lot of overlap where we're not reinventing the wheel, which is going to allow this to move a lot quicker. But until we actually work on those user stories, it's really hard to say.
Great question.
Thank you very much. I have a follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So as you roll through the process, as you're testing the database and you're working on user stories, is data security a concern?
Yeah. I got this. Yeah, so we're hoping that the board and the staff start developing, we get the charter passed, and then you guys start working on those user stories as soon as possible. Again, we're absolutely there to help you. But one of our biggest concerns and of a lot of people is how do we protect the existing database while also allowing access in a new database to be developed? And that is front and center, something we've identified for respect as well, and is a part of the discussions that are occurring today.
So to just add on to that, as far as the development and test environment, there is a separate test database. And
Yeah.
so any work that's occurring, any testing we're doing, because you're going in and creating new records and messing with things and basically trying to break it, right? And so the test database is completely separate from the active database. And then one of the things that we're going to want to ensure for both DNRC records and Flathead Water Management Board records is that there's not errors created by creating a new process where, DNRC could accidentally go in and screw something up that is actually owned by you guys or vice versa. So that would be part of that test environment.
Thank you. Can I ask one more?
Sure.
Everybody chime in. So I guess my last question that I have for you guys, thank you for your presentation and your thoughtful answers, by the way. What can we do to help you specifically? You mentioned collaboration, but to help you be successful, what do you need from us?
So the first step is for us to clearly define our roles and responsibilities. And that's first, and the charter outlines that. And so I think having you guys take a look at that charter, flag any concerns, and then just get on the same page in terms of roles and responsibilities. Second is your staff getting into the database and starting to ramp up that work. We are truly there to support, to train, and support the board and your staff to do this work. And so however you guys can prioritize your workload to start hitting this hard is, I think, is the greatest suggestion that we have for you, and asking for help when you need it. I think the biggest barrier to implementation right now is our ability to utilize the database. We're kind of band-aiding ourselves through this process right now, as we have been along the way. And so the sooner we can get you guys a functioning database, the better off I think all users are going to be.
Thank you.
Question, Mr. Chairman. So technically speaking, the state of Montana, you're the owner and manager of the database.
Yes.
So then essentially we will be taking your database and modifying it for our needs.
Yes, that's correct. And in statute under the compact, and Arnie, please reference me if I get this wrong, it says we shall provide our database for the board's use. And so this is the way that it was outlined. So yes, it's the database that we're required to maintain. And we're also required to have you guys to have a database that you can use. So we're modifying it or adding on to it. The word is, it's not quite clear in my mind. I think respect is going to tell me I'm wrong here. Either we're modifying the database or adding like a node onto the database or mirroring. I think there's all options so that you maintain the functionality you need, that we maintain data integrity across kind of both uses. And then we also maintain communication between those water rights so that we don't create problems in the future.
Board member Noble's got his hand up.
You're muted.
I think Nate pretty much answered my question when he was discussing. The DNRC database is a pretty comprehensive and well thought out tool. I guess I was just going to ask, it seemed like we would just create a subset of that database, and would we just start entering our records as part of the process, or how will that work?
So it's not quite as simple as that. I think me naively thought like, yeah, it's the same. And it was just, no, unfortunately, in working with respect, and Nate can correct me if I'm wrong here, how to maintain functionality of both systems, how to get the systems to talk to each other. And then also the water rate requirements of the board are slightly different. And Ethan, and you all know, they're different. And so modifying what we have in terms of the database today and the forms and functionality to meet your needs will have to happen. And unfortunately, that takes some work. But like Nate said, there's some things that have tremendous amount of overlap that it'll be an easy transference, and then some that might not. And then the board and your staff might have needs that we don't have that you want to have as a part of your functionality too, that we haven't considered. And so, yes, Nate is absolutely correct. We will absolutely utilize the functionality that we have and then build on it and modify it based on your needs. But the database functionality itself, I don't think respect is absolutely clear on if it's a mirroring or communicating, or I think that still needs to be determined for database security and functionality.
What are the financial implications of all of this?
So we made a very broad guess of what this would cost based on our experiences with other enhancements. We've placed that ask into House Bill 10. Its hearing will be later this week. We believe it's started at 700,000. It might have changed slightly since then, based on a reduction in cost across all agencies. We believe we have the funding to be able to pay for the enhancements that are needed for the board. But again, it was a guess based on our experiences with other enhancements with the database. But because we haven't done the story, you guys haven't done the story development and your staff haven't, it was a guess. And then that would be a further conversation with you and the tribe in terms of the state's contribution to the board.
I keep hearing that there are slightly different databases, slightly different data maybe in the databases, and it's making me think about our forms that we're approving, because that's where the data is going to come from, correct? So there may have to be kind of a cyclical review. Once we build the database, we realize we want a certain amount of information that's not included in the forms. We might have to circle back and look at the forms again, once we understand how, the database is almost a reporting feature of the approved forms. So, we're kind of trying to foresee what we want to know, but until we actually start running reports out of the database, we might have to come down and modify the forms for additional information. So, am I correct in that?
That generally is correct, but the forms should be pretty, given Nate's experience and Ethan's experience and the compact's experience with water rights in general. I think they've done a very good job of identifying what data you guys want and need and what the database can handle. That's not to say that the forms might need to be slightly modified in the future, but my understanding is that the forms are in a pretty good place to meet the database needs. But I will say from our experience, we're going through a form update process as well in the future. And, you know, for example, GIS data and lat and long in our database, and how do we handle that? That is absolutely something that we need to be considering as a state in the future for the DNRC. And so if that modifies the form and functionality of our database and our forms, yeah, we'll have to make modifications as well.
Ethan, Mr. Chairman, board members, Anna, Nate, how you doing? Can you hear me good? All right.
Yeah, hey, Ethan.
Now I'm a little concerned because I think I heard, that you were thinking our staff would spend 8 hours a week on the database work. Did I hear that correctly?
So there'll be a technical team like you've been part of, and story development. Our experience has been roughly 8 hours a week per team member in story development. Again, these are your forms, this is your data, this is your database. So we would never presume to drive that story development, but we're absolutely there to help. And our staff will be providing the same level of time and experience as well. Now, if you don't have the 8 hours, your team and your staff don't have that, it will just take longer for the database to be up and running. And so obviously everyone's capacity is going to be variable. But the more we dive into the story development with respect and kind of building out those needs that you guys have already developed, respect is going to give us a much better sense of the time commitments required to see this operational.
Thank you. For consideration also, I would say that I've seen DNRC go through this process, and they did use people who had an extraordinarily high amount of experience with the existing water rights database, which is a different scenario than what we have with our current staff. Additionally, I can tell you just right off the cuff that capacity-wise, that puts us immediately underwater. And not trying to be resistant to anything here, but that is a reality of our current workload and development of our other projects, is that if we were to take our existing staff, and that's assuming it's not me, but the staff, and dedicate an 8-hour amount of their time to this, we'll have a difficult time making our 30-day deadlines for domestic allowances. We're about to embark on a substantial new workload for development domestic allowances and stock water domestic allowances. Additionally, as the spring sets up, we will need to navigate complaints for an area that hasn't had a place to complain about water right issues since the mid-90s. So I do want to couch a little of the expectations on what our staff can provide. And maybe it makes sense to look back at the budget and think about hiring a specialist to help this along, a dedicated employee who would perhaps be 100% committed to looking at our forms. And by the way, our forms are certainly designed with the water rights database in mind, if that makes you feel a little bit better, Board Member Hendrickson. But it might be really worth considering looking for a way to fund a full-time database person who is really just going to focus on these stories, looking at what our needs are, and providing that 100% full-time. I'm happy to guide that person, and won't look at that as like a full hands-off arrangement, but I think our own staff will have a lot of difficulty just learning how to use the database, and not because I underestimate my staff's capabilities, but it is a complicated database, and so I'm throwing that out, as it takes some people who are new to DNRC years to really get super proficient with the water rights database. Thank you.
Mr. Shannon? Yeah, Ethan answered the question that I was going to ask, and that question was going to be, what is the proposed solution? And I think that if that proposed solution is viable through a consensus of the board, I think Ethan should spend some time fleshing that out. Because most certainly, we don't want present staff to get under water. And the other thing is, we want to engage. This is an important component of the commitment we've made. So I would certainly entertain some fleshing out of solutions and costs to move us forward so that we can be a good partner.
I agree.
I have a follow-up question. So Ethan, I think you make an excellent point, and if we're going to move this thing forward, we need time on the task. Do you foresee needing to hire someone as a full-time staff, someone as on a contract hire? Do you need more time to think about it before you answer that question?
I believe we could probably achieve this either way.
Okay,
I would say that the commitment for a contract employee will be higher initially, but long-term may make a certain amount of sense. However, what oftentimes happens is when you have access to somebody to solve a lot of your problems for you with the database, which DNRC does have database specialists who really, that's what they're looking at all day long, is how to integrate the information, work with the information. I would also not be opposed to picking up somebody for that position that was a staff long-term person. I do not think our current budget reflects an ability to do that.
thank you.
Any further questions?
Are we, Mr. Chairman, are we in agreement that we will entertain a proposal for this problem?
I am. Georgia?
Yes,
Yes. Roger?
Yes, Anna's got her hand up also.
Sorry not to jump in here, and I know you guys were making a motion. I just want to reiterate, yes, Ethan is absolutely correct. The training required to get up to speed on the database is significant. I will just say that the database has gone through significant enhancements that are making it more user-friendly. And so I think that might help solve the problem. Doesn't obviously solve the issue that Ethan brought up. But then also DNRC is absolutely committed and already has begun training the staff on the database, both within our compacts program here at DNRC, but also are there to train your staff on the existing database so that they can help do that story development. And if you guys hire a new staff, we're absolutely committed to training them as well.
And just a matter of clarification, we weren't entertaining motion here. We were just encouraging Ethan to look at the things.
yes.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, so,
And, excuse me. Oh, okay, come on, sorry.
So is Payla going to distribute this MOU or the other term that was used, or when will we see this?
Payla, I think immediately, correct?
I can send it after this meeting, you all. I want to get back down.
you hear that, Roger?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you both very much for your excellent presentation. I'm kind of looking forward to this project getting kicked off.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, and it's great to see you all again. It's been many months, so have a great day.
You too. So back to the agenda, inadvertently skipped something. Is there any public comment for items not on the agenda?
Yeah, the public comment, I don't know where I'm supposed to do that. You can.
Or you have a more generalized. We're gonna have a presentation on that thing, if you would like, for the employee, until we talk about and there is a specific public comment period. Right, we're definitely. Okay, you can also have a general comment.
right, well, it's very, you do both.
Okay, so is there nobody remotely?
No comments on you.
Let the record reflect, there's no comments. Next item, number 5, draft form 60 DF D, development domestic allowances.
Say it 5 times fast and you get it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Today I have kind of a little bit of a hot off the presses update to our draft that talked about some of the water use standards. And I hope to have it a little earlier, but that's the way the workload shifts around here. I'll share this with you also. This is, please understand, not something that we were asking for action on today, and nor do we want to have the board take action on this particular form arrangement that we've got. It was determined from the work group that we were very close, but not quite there for this particular meeting. That said, it seemed like an excellent opportunity to provide some additional.
Did Roger get a copy of this?
I have emailed you a copy of this, Roger. Do you see it?
Sorry, yeah, I have it open.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry.
I was muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for keeping me on track. And this isn't something that you have to fill me in on or change everything on today, but I did want to try to, like, as fast as I could, literally the last moments before this meeting, try to get something on paper. So people wanted to write on it and tear it up and have something tangible, they certainly could. And with the board's permission, I'd like to just walk through a couple of the items that were discussed at some different work sessions, at some one-on-one discussions with folks who were interested in development domestic allowances. Yes, I'm sure there are typos, and that'll make it fun to read. See who can find the most, but if the board would allow, could I walk through this a little bit and just generally talk through things?
Yes.
Thank you. So one of the first and front difficulties with these development domestic allowances is determining when is a thing over in the camp of an individual domestic allowance or a shared domestic allowance, and when is a thing over in the camp of a development domestic allowance. The reason that it's material and important is that if you're over in the development domestic allowances, you have the responsibility to measure your water every year, and that water measurement has to come to this office, and it is certainly an added issue in terms of how you might run your daily water use life. So it is important on that front. That said, the board did offer some guidance that we had carried forward in the past on how many homes / businesses could be on a shared domestic allowance, or how many individual domestic allowances do you get to before you become a development domestic allowance? And the answer is like 3 and less, you're over in the non-measurement category, and 4 and more puts you right close to that 10 acre foot amount, because the maximum amount for 4 is 2.4 acre foot per year. That starts to push that threshold, and the intent of these exceptions is that when you start getting a little close to that amount that nobody wanted to see anything go over, you'd measure your water and you'd just be able to easily show everybody that you're well under that amount. No pun intended on that one, but I'll try to fit a dad joke in here a bit. So that also leaves us finding ourselves like, well, wow, okay, 4 and more, we understand that. But when you start looking at the parcelized landscape, it gets complicated fast. There are existing subdivisions that are out there that sometimes are owned by the same people, but the parcel lines are already in place. There are pending subdivisions that are out there that are sometimes owned by the same people, but the parcel lines are not in place yet. There might just be a big parcel where somebody wants to put in 3 or 4 homes, and you have to kind of pick and choose how to navigate, how to offer some certainty. And what we have here is something that I assume that people will look over pretty hard and try to determine whether it does in fact offer enough certainty. And I do hope to find myself in front of the work group again. They'll be good at telling me whether I have achieved that or not, and helping me to draft improved language on what the certainty is. But one thing was clear from most of the work group participants, which was that if somebody was to come in and do one new development or one new, any kind of domestic allowance, and then let it sit for a while, and then slowly add on new things, that they wanted to have procedures in place to where we would still look at those additively, even though they're not all necessarily applied for in this office all at once. So that is the intent. We would start to issue especially shared and development domestic allowances to offer that level of certainty. We'll try to clarify here, and then we will do our best to use GIS tools. And we do collect important well data so that we'll be able to associate new uses that have come out of this office. And feel free, Roger, you played a big role in this, and you, I hope you can talk right now and then interrupt me if needed. Can we hear you, Roger? Maybe.
You're on mute, Roger.
I was muted, yeah. So, yeah, I'll chime in
Okay.
as needed, so.
But I didn't want to cut you off from anything.
No, I'm just following along with your memo.
Sure, so that's where we're looking for future domestic allowances to try to like make sure that we don't quietly phase in things that are beyond what was anticipated, what was agreed to in the ordinance. Maximum number of wells for allowances was a big topic. How do you handle that? What do you do with the maximum number of wells? And what we generally have here is the agreement that for these allowances that have a maximum flow rate, as soon as you start adding new wells, those wells, when added together, still need to be below that flow rate, even if they're at their peak. So although somebody might have 2 wells in and they're capable of producing 35 gallons a minute each, and when one of them runs, they would be right at that threshold, but not over. In a scenario that what this currently contemplates, which is a draft scenario here, a draft that you can change as needed, we would be looking to divide those in half and try to set those wells up so that they were really not pulling more, in the chance that they were running at the same time. And so you'll notice in here I've got a little chart. And it just kind of goes through and it has a list of the numbers of wells that would be used. And if you looked at that in relation to 35 gallons per minute, it quickly gives you a breakdown of maximum rates that each of the individual wells will really need to be under. Of course, I do see scenarios where somebody might have one well over here that's 30 and one over here that's 5. I don't think that would necessarily preclude a person from being able to enjoy one of these allowances, but it seemed clear from everybody I was talking to that I needed to try to find a way for this office to watch that cumulative flow rate. We walked away from that. We talked a little bit about water right issuance values and remarks. This really hasn't changed much. DNRC is not in love with my approach on this particular item, but what I would like to do for these is because we don't, the memo still kind of contemplates not going in and trying to calculate every little use associated with an allowance. I would prefer to look at these as not to exceed values, in that, if you're gonna get an individual domestic allowance, you're gonna get a water right that's not to exceed 2.4 acre feet per year, not to exceed 35 gallons per minute. And the reason for that is that when you go in and you try to do the estimated calculations, what one of these is, the only thing you know is that it's an estimate. And then all estimates are a little wrong. Some of them are a lot wrong, some of them are less wrong. And I do, in the memo, try to clearly set one exception to that, which is for stock. And that stock has a maximum amount of water that they need to have for survival. And so anybody who's getting a stock allowance or a domestic allowance that has a stock purpose would need to have, they would need to follow the standards set forth in the administrative rules of Montana, which have been common standards for many years on designating animal units. There's a whole chart of different kinds of animal units for cows and pigs and chickens and bison. And you can do the math, and the idea behind that is that you would have a water right for enough water that you're not going to be overwatering your stock. And I do say that understanding that stock herds change in size. And so as with any of these other estimates, I don't want you to think that there will be an over realistic accuracy, because stock herds change day to day sometimes. There's a little moment here about association of water rights, and that is that whenever we have a situation where water rights are piggybacked on one another, I wanted to try to be clear in here that we will formally associate those water rights. So if you had an existing state-based exception to a permit, and you added a little on for a new individual domestic allowance, we're already in the practice of associating those water rights. So that's fairly consistent. I do get in a little to things that were largely in here before, talking about the water annual volume flow rate assessments, and that I do prefer generally rely on the maximum threshold set forth in the ordinance. It's easy to back up into it because it's right there in the law that governs our operations. And frankly, any of us could show up out to a site and easily using a little bit of measurement, calculate somebody's lawn and garden acreage. We could get out there and find out whether or not you're distributing stock water into a tank or if you've got a pond. And so a lot of those control features that are really already built into very tangible, very physical, very recognizable things, I think will largely suffice, so long as we are cautious on our authorization and approval steps. And then for those larger development domestic allowances, the ones that approach 10 acre feet a year, we have the fallback that we will always be having that water measurement requirement for those small developments and such. I have a section here, a fee assessment by well section, and board member Walt McDonald specifically wanted to see a higher fee charge, and this recognizes a per well fee, so that for each well that's part of one of these allowances, we'd be looking to get a $125 fee for those, so that we would have the sufficient funds to explore each of the headworks. Fifth, water use. There are a number of folks coming in to apply for their developments that want to offset their lawn and garden volumes, maybe get a few more homes, but less water dedicated to lawn and garden, and use irrigation, flathead Indian irrigation project water for their lawn and garden use. A lot of folks wanted to see a letter from the irrigation project that was an allowable practice. I wrote this particular paragraph quickly and suspect it will be improved, but the point is it's in here. And you know, it gives us that placeholder so the word group can chew on a little bit. Public water supply connections is something else that consistently came up, depending on different people I talked to. And any time that you're within 500 feet of a public water supply, they won't let you hook up. We want to see a letter that says they won't let you hook up, and that's something that I've tried to put in here. Can we get us over to page 4? And this is just sort of the free-for-all options and questions, because this is the page that lets you know we didn't quite get it all done. Okay. And I wanted to throw in here one of the options that was considered was to tie into the DEQ water standards and look at the average number of bedrooms in a home and then tie that to a quarter-acre yard and then divide the maximum 10 acre-feet by this calculation, and you find yourself limiting to about 10 homes if you do that. But a lot of people could poke holes in why that's a bad idea. Some houses use less water. Not everybody wants a yard. They're all very legitimate and realistic reasons that you could poke holes in this. So here it just sits as something that I wanted you to know that we did give some considerable thought to. We also talked a lot about applying peak demand standards to apply for well flow rate limitations and to help drive those, you know, how many wells do you need? What's the maximum number of wells, et cetera. I wouldn't be surprised if we looked at that harder again between now and the finalization. But I wanted to, you know, list it as something that has been talked about quite a bit. Then option 3, complexity charge of our own staff. As we look at these and we start looking at, you know, it is a requirement to provide us the plat and planning information. If it is a subdivision, it's going to use one of these development domestic allowances, and those quickly get complicated. Some people thought maybe we should consider some type of complexity charge so that if a particular application came in and, you know, there's a big difference between you know, this application and this application, right? And again, this is a little free form, it's an option, still kind of up for consideration. Then we get into just some like a list of questions, and the questions we have, you know, what about our B lots, condos, duplexes, ADUs? They're all different. Okay, so, you know, do we look at them differently? Do we just still look at our yards and our other controls? What do we do about subdivisions that are adjacent? So if somebody's got one subdivision platted here and then another one right platted here, do we start looking at those as 2 separate development domestic allowances, or are those really got to come under the moniker of a single development domestic allowance? Future subdivisions, what happens if somebody puts a bunch of wells out on a single parcel and then divides it? Storage keeps coming up, how we might handle storage, you know, and fire requirements seems to be an item that a lot of people are concerned about, especially as it pertains to flow rates. And then the questions I have, because I keep bringing it up all the time. Some people do ask me, and I try to keep it alive, but I do believe we should consider, you know, failure to comply with the annual volumes, failure to comply with the as-built limits. I believe in offering as much certainty as we possibly could. Somebody coming in to try to get and apply for one of these, know what their risk assessment is for that. Maybe that's possible, maybe it's not. We really have in the ordinance the like, oh my, the big amount of fining and revocation. But I suspect we might be able to engage in other types of curtailment of illegal uses like grace periods, warnings, some smaller things, that kind of thing. And then the mixing and matching with existing exceptions is gonna be a challenge. It's already been a challenge for me. As of right now, the way that I've handled that challenge is to just kind of put blinders on and say that was before the effective date. And this is after the effective date, and that unless they're wanting to use a shared joint point of diversion, in other words, add a new individual domestic allowance onto an existing well, I can kind of keep them separate. And that would, also, that's not just things that were issued before the effective date, but that would apply to registrations of state-based uses, and in certain circumstances, registrations of tribal water rights, things that, all the things that happened before, just kind of drawing a bright line in the sand of like, well, now this is now. And so if, you know, if you had a 602 over on your property, well, you wanted some new allowances, well, we won't factor that existing 602 into it, although we do recognize they are two kind of exceptions. You may redirect me or the court may redirect us on that topic later, but that's my pitch for now.
So engineer, you want our comments by next board meeting?
Mr. Chairman, board members, if you could give me your comments to this in a week, it'd be super, I know. And the reason I say that is that there's a lot of enthusiasm, maybe try to finalize Form A at your next board meeting. And if you put the brakes on that, or maybe board member Noble wants to chime in and redirect me, but that is kind of what I'm trying to do. It may not work out, but that's the reason is that I do plan on meeting with a lot of other people. If I get substantive direction from you, I can move that around and incorporate that into those other discussions to do the best that I can. And so just throwing it out there, maybe that's too ambitious of an assignment, but anyway.
Thank you.
Excellent. And I do know there's some folks that have come specifically for these topics. So,
Mr. Engineer, I just have one quick question.
Mr.
What's an ADU?
And then additional dwelling unit is additional
Ancillary.
extra added ancillary associated. Okay, it's the house behind the house, and in plain cowgirl language, you call it a mother-in-law house. It's fair.
Any further questions from the board? Do you have any public comment? Will you identify yourself for the record?
My name is Claudia McCready. From San Ignatius, Montana. Ethan has been great. It's been a lot of help to me. I'm one of those unfortunate people that started this process with one set of rules and got to the first of the end of DEQ, and now they've been holding my file for a whole year because they need information for the next. And I've been trying to be patient throughout all that. There's nothing else to do. But now it's looking like the rules that you might set up are a little different from the rules that were put into place when I started my project. And like I said, Ethan's been great to try to explain to me what's going on. And I know that you guys are involved in a very complicated process, and that you're trying to put rules and regs in place that are going to have really long-term effects. And I really respect the time that you're putting into that. I know I'm not alone in my situation. I'm sure there's others, big and small. But it does leave us in a really uncomfortable position where we've been required to already spend fairly large amounts of money on engineering and fees that have been required by the state and the NRC and all these different organizations that there are as you go through this process. And then to get clear to the end and feel like, oh no, do I have to start all the way over? because now the laws are changing, or the rules are changing, and so I guess, my comment today, or my suggestion, is that just as you had an interim period with the individual loans, because it was messy, I'm, wondering if you could have an interim where some of the people like me that have already complied with everything you've asked us to do. We've tried to meet all the requirements plus. We spend a ton of money on projects that we can't move forward with that are incurring money every month from us, as you guys are trying to work through a very complicated process. And but it also leaves us in a very uncomfortable position. So I'm just wondering if for some of the people like us, or like me, if, there would be a way that we could continue with the old rules. When we originally applied to DEQ, pre-COVID, they sent us a letter that said, you will basically be grandfathered in. You will be able to continue this process that you've already started. And you will be able to abide by the old laws because you've already started the process. And so we went forward with all of that engineering and fees, assuming that that's the way it was going to be. And then when we got to the very end of the process, which was lengthy because of COVID, we got a letter that basically said, well, yeah, we know that's what you said to start with, but I guess we've changed our mind. And I'm like, how's that work? And so just, I guess, to be aware that although Ethan is trying really hard to help us as much as he can, there's this complication that he has of people like me that have got stuck in the middle. I guess I don't know how else to explain. And so as you're going through things and thinking about things, I guess I'd just like you to consider that maybe there would be a way for some of us that have complied with the original rules to be allowed to go forward, because I know this is a hard, lengthy process. I know that Ethan is sympathetic to my situation and that he's doing all that he can to help me. But it's just a hard, lengthy process that you guys are going through. And I know that you're trying really hard to put together good rules and regulations in place. But it also leaves people like me in a really bad spot of just limbo, just absolute limbo of not being able to go forward, but still not being able to stop either. You're caught in it. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more public comments? Anybody online?
No comments on that.
We have to continue. Roger, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that memorandum, I would look at it as a work in progress right now. It was the result of 2 work sessions on the development domestic allowance, and we're hoping that we have one more work session and maybe we can finalize that form. But there will be some changes to that memorandum as you see in your hands today. So anyway, it's a work in progress. It's a good start, but it's an evolving document.
Thank you. Okay, on to number 6, final geothermal 64F Part A and Part B. By James Briggs.
Mr. Chairman, James Frakes is not here at the office today. I hope you'll allow me to cover for him.
Please do.
I'm also going to give you perhaps some of your easiest business today. You did already approve Part A of this, and I'm handing you the finalized application, or form for part A. And then, in the way that I've been trying to run these forms, I like to get part A, approved and then do part B so that we can draft to a completed, process. There's not a whole lot, to discuss, other than recap. We did, look at the environmental issues, and that did, actually, bring us to one improvement that we've made on this form, as per Board Member Sneeze's suggestion. And if you go to page 5 of 5, we do have, at the very bottom, and we've added this, we're starting to add this to all of our forms now as an informative bit, which is that, hey, this is an attention. Just guys, you've got this doesn't mean you don't have to get other permits. So you might need to get yourself an aquatic lands conservation ordinance permit or a 404 clean water permit. And that is akin to what you might see out with the rest of the state. And any DNRC water rights office, you'll see this string permitting. But of course, it's a little different here on the reservation because the 310 permits, to my best of my understanding, are subsumed by the alpha.
So we're on Form A.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for adding that.
Sure. It's on Form A and Form B. Oh. Well, anyway, the draft, Form B that you have, we think we should just let it sit till your next board meeting and have it out there and open for public comment, so that if anybody is so inclined to jump in, and I do have a couple of well drillers who are interested in that, and I will ping them and say, oh, hey, you got Form A's done, you want to take a look at Form B, make sure you like it. That will give them plenty of time, and it will give you more time. You don't have to give me any comments until the next board meeting.
Question?
Sure.
So this is, I think, more of a generic question to all of our forums. Thinking forward to the database and hearing DNRC was talking about going lat long. And I don't think our forums have a lat long.
They do.
Do they? I'm just missing it.
It's a big topic around here because it's hard information to get. A lot of our staff would like to get rid of the lat long. And if it's not on this, it'd be an oversight. But I do see on item 7, oh wait, that's the draft. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I got a form mixed up there. Well, I think you might have caught us on this one, Shane.
But it seems like an easy, every phone has the ability to record lat long and it's been more. You know, historically, that was a hard thing. You had to have a GPS device, and almost every smartphone has the ability.
Well, your phone,
It was accurate.
I do see it as absent on both the completed form and the draft update form, so my apologies about that. Oh, with your permission, I'll add those. to points of diversion and places to use.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
And thanks for the attentive look at those.
Any further questions, the board?
Do we need to approve these today? Or
You can't, just gotta go put that online.
Okay.
Is there any public comment? You know, really don't need public comment.
No problem.
Okay, no public comment. Let's move on to section 7, draft stock water allowance form 60 SA part A.
Excellent, Mr. Chairman, board members. This form also had a work group, is a little more concise, and it seemed like we got some better cohesion. I did have to make a few last minute edits that somehow slipped through, and I wouldn't be surprised because forms are tough. There's a lot of detail in forms. We have sometimes when we get 7 people looking at a form and in this case, we did have the items that are in red. They're the diverted flow. They're really highlighted just to let you know that the draft that went out and missed that. And there was also an error on the instructions on page 8 that is corrected. But in general, this, we did meet with the NRCS manager for the area.
You said page 8?
6.
Item 8
Oh, item 8.
on page 6. Apologies. And so for this, we did get board member Hendrickson's BIA participation. We did get the NRCS to participate. We did have the tribes, we did have the state, we did have our office. So we've tried to do the best that we can on developing what is does in fact amount to a fairly complicated type of an allowance, because it has got a well option where you can put a well in and put water into a stock tank for your stock, and keep in mind, these don't need to be hooked up to a home or anything. This is just a stock allowance. But this one has it's pretty much the only kind of allowance with a pit option where you can use groundwater seepage or a non-perennial source, so long as you are on a contiguously parcel that's 40 acres or larger. And you can actually use a pit, not a perennial stream, but a non-perennial stream. Shane may make us define that, Bishop. But and that has a capacity of 5 acre-feet with an annual volume of 10 acre-feet or less. And then there is a unique surface water allowance for stock water, where you can put pipe out and some surface water and put that in a stock tank. And that's much needed on the reservation, because there's a lot of surface water sources where if you're efficient, you put that water into a stock tank and be able to disperse your forage and your stock use of forage, and perhaps even keep them out of the creek is our hopes. We did add a few important things in from the work groups, like this word diverted that I almost forgot to put in there, but the state's hydrologist, Maya Rao, did remind me that I missed that. We got some typo corrections. We added some language about fencing. When you use a developed spring, so that the stock water won't damage or hurt your point of diversion or the developed spring area. Along with a lot of other excellent improvements, I felt very fortunate to have so many other agencies participate in the drafting of this particular form. In my opinion, I think we could, if the board likes this form right now, I think you could consider taking some public comment and approving it. Otherwise, if you have some back to the drawing board moments, we can achieve some changes if you need them.
do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I think it's pretty simple form for the most part, so. It deviates a little bit from DNRC's process and that they use animal dwelling units to define a volume. It doesn't appear that there's anything like that on there, is there, Ethan?
The memo that you're gonna improve that talks about the water standardization of these analyses, that imposes the use of AUs, animal units, for setting a volume for the stock portion.
Okay,
So what would the board like to do?
I can sit down if you'd like to take some comment.
Sure, I'll give you the chance. Is there any public comment? Thank you.
No online.
Yeah, so we have no public comment. So board, want a week or 2 weeks, look at this, or do you want to go for it right now?
We do have that law.
I saw that.
And get some of the, hang on, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we go ahead and approve that stock water form as is. It's gone through a couple iterations. Sounds like all of the concerns have been addressed. So anyway, that would be my motion.
Thank you. Motion by Roger. And a second by Teresa. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Water engineer report. Mr. Mace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Our water engineer reports today. We've been working a lot of infrastructure, a lot of training here in the office. You'll see the little green light up there. There's 3 of those now in the office that provide seamless wireless protocol access. So if you're in here and you get signed on to the Wi-Fi, you shouldn't get choked out by somebody else's Wi-Fi use. So these are all direct line. The one hang up that we've got still is the security camera. We're almost there. You might have noticed a wire above the door when you showed up. We'll have the security camera up and running. If it interests people, you can look in the cabinet. We've got a little server rack with all of our connections. And both of these areas in here are now hardwired with active network cabling, as are the front offices, the printer. And then upstairs has got 2 locations where you can have separate workstations for recorded internet access. So we are pretty good on our low voltage upgrades, and happy to see that move along. We have got some additional quotes to look at air conditioning and modified heating and air services for this building. That's something that we're going to need. We do have the sound deadening drapes. They're here. We wanted to get one up for you so you could see one and see if you liked it, but we didn't quite get that buttoned up this morning. Being person down. I'm gonna ask Carrie to give us an update, if she would, on how we're doing on applications so far. Carrie, thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. So our update on our applications this month in comparison to January, we have 26 new applications for Part A. And we have approved 17 new applications, and that's a total of 293 Part A applications for domestic allowances. And we have approved 265 total in this month. And we have 24 part fees for domestic allowances and we have issued a total of 7 water rights so far.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Ms. Burns, I know you're typing away on the minutes there, but I did want to impress the board members with just our general billing and month-to-month accounting work that had to go on. You have a ballpark for them about how many bills we have to manage every month?
Right now, we're managing, at least 13 monthly bills. And then outside bills, that are included are any improvements that are made to the office or any supplies that we're purchasing outside of, the companies that we normally pay each month.
Excellent. And then we added that your reimbursements and other fees for legal services and HR services and all of those things. But we are doing an excellent job getting all of the accounting kind of consolidated. We're still getting a few bills over at CSKT office, and I know it sounds crazy, but trying to herd all of those cats together is quite an effort. But we did finally figure out the propane situation in the brewery, so we got 4 good men on that front.
Question? Yes. Are you anticipating any bills need to be paid next week? And the reason I ask is because I'll be out of state and I don't know for sure whether Clayton's gonna be back or not.
Right, we did try to get everything front loaded as much as we possibly could today. Do we have signatures that are due for today?
I did give those to Ken, for signature, and there won't be anything that students.
So we know. I'm just sneak up on us. Thank you. Let's see, we are doing quite a bit of training, like I said, and Carrie's really learned about water rights. It's a steep curve if you don't know anything about water rights to jump right into it. And luckily, she's got some other skills, and I believe her and James will be doing some field work. Our first field work effort is going to happen next week. They'll be running some well probes and such to figure out some static water levels and things that we need to go through the applications that we've seen. Also, I can congratulate Carrie for drawing the safety officer straw, which happened yesterday. And so she will be developing a safety plan for the office. That will likely include an ask for first aid supplies and protective personal equipment, that type of thing from you. I will maybe look for some training for staff so that they can have at least some basic first aid. But I'll put a pin here now of like whether or not we should have an AED in this office. It seems like a business, but be thinking about it. I know that they kind of a certain price. That said, before I have an ask for some money, I will check with you on some process. We do have some personnel policies that I gave you a draft of, and I'm just checking it. Has anybody had any chance to even kind of crack? They're not in your packet today, Mr. Chairman. They're given to you on a previous work session. Yeah, and they're a draft, a working product. I want to get, again, I try to get things in your hands so we can keep things moving and take smaller bites, but they're out there, and I'll be looking for your guidance on how you'd like to interact with these. And I want to meet your expectations. So any direction you've got on what your preferences are, we can continue to just update the draft. I did have staff look at this draft and offer me some comments. I do have some things that I'd like to recommend from staff. And there's a bunch of additions in there. You see tons of pending things, and that doesn't even include the things that you have yet to tell me that need to be in here that I have not put in there. So anyway, that was my last real bit of business before asking you for a little bit of money. And unless you had some discussion, I can ask you for some money now.
Any discussion, board?
Just a general comment slash question if I can.
Sure.
Given that Carrie and James are gonna be going out in the field, is it customary or have you thought about your staff wearing any kind of reflective vests or anything when they're out in the field? Is there any protocol for that? Well, I'll give you the genesis of the question. I send research teams out in the field all the time, and we have found that if they have some kind of vest on, something with some reflective tape, something that looks like they're out there doing something professionally or research-based, they don't get harassed by the public. We have found we could have the opposite problem without that. So I'm just asking, I want you to be safe out there.
Yes, of course.
We do have in the personnel policy the option for safety awards, which would be, I think, the correct avenue. So my hope is to get some of that reflective material on a vest that has our embroidered logo, has a certain level of officialness to it. Maybe even a hat, something like that. At least, I don't want to brand our field staff too much, but enough to have them look official and not get hit by cars. So that's excellent advice. I do intend to follow through with that, and then maybe even in the short term, we'll get something simple that doesn't have our brand on it, just for intro. I do know that these particular sites that they're going to are on private property and not at the roadside. So for what it's worth, I'm more concerned that they have some bear spray. As a PSA, the male grizzly bears have been spotted as moving around. Females with the sows are still hibernating.
Oh, so those males are out already?
That is, I know several places they've been spotted. And looking at carcasses, so roadside carcasses especially, so you are bear aware on the road. Sorry to go on a tangent there about bears, but they are close. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to ask you for some money now?
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you. I have a couple of expense requests. First item is for air purifiers. The staff have noticed it is dusty, stuffy in this building, and they would like to have some improved air quality. The air purifiers we're looking at with an extra filter run about $550. Our plan is to ask for both, but buy one and make sure that it works good. We will be buying that from a place that can be returned, so that if it's a dud, we haven't lost the public's money to something that's got low utility. The second item I have on here are two new Adobe Acrobat licenses. That is an essential piece of software used for our business. I hope you'll allow for that. Third is a ARC GIS license. As we add staff, we need more licensing. We are carefully sipping on the one GIS license we have now. So, we do share and time things so as to keep your expenses low. And we do need to own our own well probe. Longer one costs more, and that's an $1,100 item, pretty standard for an organization like this to have one or more well probes. If you think that's bothersome, wait till I ask you for a flow meter, because that will not be cheap. Anyway, board, the total of these items is $3,400, and I will remind you that I failed to put the public comment section in here, and so I'll sit down in case there's a need to, or if you have any questions.
I have one question. I know you have a fire background, so I'm sure you've already thought of this, but I went to Science on Tap Talk on indoor air quality in this era of protracted wildfire that we're having right now. And the speaker was a public health specialist down in Missoula, and she was really advocating that people put much more heavy duty filters on their air filters, indoor air purifiers, just as a matter of public health, especially young women. And elderly, if you have anybody coming in, they're just finding an increased uptick in particulate matter in indoor air. So I want you guys to be safe. And I don't know what these filters cost. Where you check.
You know, what we can do in advance, and I can add it to this ask, is we can buy a couple of box fans and filters. There is a makeshift operating fan that does in fact improve things. And I would be happy to add a couple of those setups to this request list. Of $300 additional is what I'd probably ask for that arrangement. Plus, it never hurts to have fans. But,
So you asking for money back now, or?
I can increase it. It's I'm trying to respond to the board member. So I would say, yeah, we can move this amount to $3,700. Yep, $3,700. If that's.
I think we have to amend the agenda.
Do we?
Yeah.
We can also do that next.
What the simple amend the agenda? Just say something. Get a motion to amend the agenda.
I would make a motion to amend the agenda in section 8.11 to add an additional $300 for fans.
Motion by Teresa,
I second.
second by Georgia, all in favor,
Uh,
motion carried.
Mr. Chair.
What's what?
I would also make the motion to, that we authorize $3,700 in expenses as presented by the water engineer.
You still have to have your comment for that.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to have, is there any public comment? On expenditures of $3,700. Anybody online?
There's no one online.
If Teresa's made a motion to approve expenditures of $3,700,
I'll second.
the second by Georgia, all in favor?
Aye.
Roger?
Yes.
Thank you, board members.
So is there any board member updates? And I actually have one. I didn't have as good a time in Helena at the conference as my expenditures may have left it.
Does anyone?
Huh?
Does anyone have a good time?
Well, yeah, I can, if you'd like, I'll put some more air on my face, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the expenditure table did have the wrong value in it. The information reported to me about Ken's legal conference had his whole monthly expenditure on that line, and so I do apologize. And although I took it out of the table, I was going to bring it up at the bylaw work session. We can go ahead and cover that update right here.
Sorry.
No, and you were right, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Because it looked like I had a really good.
I got a couple things. One is just remind everybody that I'm soliciting items for the work session. So if you have any topics, just email them to me and I will compile them when we have when we schedule that work session. And then two, Ethan, I have a recommendation for a manufacturer for water meters that I will email you based on years of experience. And three, I was just wondering if we had any update on our logo.
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Noble, as of right now, there's been some communication back and forth with our staff member Carrie and Georgia's daughter, and they're looking to move the ball a little bit on the logo, but that's where we're at, and I do recognize that the whip is cracked, and we'll try to reemphasize this ongoing project.
Great, great.
That's just for public, board member comments, updates. Are there any general public comments?
Online.
Okay, there's no public comments. Next,
One.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry,
I'm Mark Carson, and,
could you step over here? So we can put it on?
I probably should just wait until afterwards to talk to Ethan, but this is the first print of the options of the project water use and development domestic. And I'm curious why it takes twice as much water to do a 10,000 square foot yard as it does to run a 3-bedroom home. 3-bedroom homes year round thing. Where did that value?
Mr. Engineer,
These values here,
This fall. I know where those are.
that is 2.5 acre feet per acre for quarter acre yard. And 2.5 acre feet per acre comes out of the DRC's guidelines that they use for calculating the water volumes for exceptions to permits.
As this stands, this is going to be difficult. Quite a few projects.
No, and this one right here is in the option, just options considered. So this is even less than anything proposed, but I do believe your comment on that would be useful for people.
Well, I'm working on several subdivisions right now, 15, 16 lots, working on an 84 unit RV park. And we were trimming back yard area in our considerations in order to retain water for domestic use. And I really urge this board to consider the ability of limiting this yard area, therefore the yard water usage, so that more can be used for domestic purposes. This is going to be very difficult to make many projects that are outstanding be able to put forward. In some cases, we have some projects that have flood and irrigation water available, and we did not anticipate using any domestic water for the yards. We've been all the way through subdivision review on the thing, and the subdivision review through the county and through the DEQ has been predicated on not using any well water for the yards. So I hope that the board, I'll follow up with a better letter. I actually had to go check the batteries in my calculator. I was running numbers while Ethan was, I just couldn't hardly believe myself. Because for a 3-bedroom home, if you're doing 1 acre foot, you are using 892 gallons per day. And the DEQ value is 300 gallons per day. So you've got a huge factor into this thing for yards that a lot of our proposals are not considered. And on the forms that we've been filling out so far for an individual well or shared well on one piece of ground, there's been flexibility in the form to adjust the size of your yard so that your water request would be merited on the size of that yard. This is a value that is pulled out of some kind of average, right? So I really hope that we can use this precious commodity we call water more efficiently as the proposals are made. I mean, if you really want to irrigate 600 gallons a day, 365 days a year, I guess this form is a pretty good deal. But that's an awful lot of water to say you have to go push a lawnmower. I'll be following it up with a written comment later. I thank you for your
comments.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
No other comments.
Thank you. So next steps, meetings. I will be out of pocket all this week.
Oh, Mr. Chairman. Just an update. I missed it on board member updates, but I'm going to be in Utah. From the 19th through the 25th for spring break. So I won't be here for the work session. That's when that's scheduled in that week.
And I will be in New Mexico next week. So we have a board meeting next week. I won't be there. We're both going to sit with some.
Yeah, trying to.
Sorry, I lost my agenda.
So what does the board desire to do? Wait a couple of weeks before we have another work session?
Well, I could be here on the 16th, but you can't, right? And you're here on the 23rd, but I'm not.
Yes.
So would we have a plan?
I don't think you need a quorum for a work session. You're not making any decisions.
Okay.
For what it's worth, board members, I will be down on the 23rd also. Doesn't mean you can't meet and have a work session without them here, though, so just.
What is the board's desire?
I don't know what to do.
Well, I think there's a good chance Clayton will be back by then, too.
What about Roger? Are you gonna be here both dates?
No, I'm out all of March, so I would rather postpone a work session.
Okay, that settles it.
Okay. Then we will have our regular meeting on April 13th. You okay with that, Roger?
Yes,
Okay. Do we have any other business before someone makes a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, after this meeting, are we going into the bylaws meeting then?
Possibly. I have to leave at 5:30. Did you hear that? I have to leave at 5:30. Do you want to postpone the bylaw session?
Well, you're gonna need to leave earlier than 5:30 if you're gonna get your car, right, or your truck.
Well, no, that gives me time to get over there.
Does it?
Yeah. I recommend.
I wouldn't mind having a half-hour session because and pick up where we left off, which was on fees and board member expenses, just to have a little more discussion on that.
Do we have a motion to adjourn the formal session?
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's adjourned. Meeting's adjourned.
We have.
Anyone 5 minutes? Get some fresh
Yes.
air or anything?
Great, thank you.
Snacks. I didn't keep one. I'm serious. Thank you.
I'm looking to grab yours.
Thank you.
Okay, it's March 9th. This is a work session of the Flathead Reservation Water Management Board. In attendance are Roger Noble, myself, Lisa Wall McDonald, Georgia Sneeze, and Sean Henderson. Shane. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
All right, so first, we're here at the start of the document, and what I try to do is capture the substantive changes that you as board generally urge me to put in here, and it's important that you review these things because I could be wrong, and this is how you ensure that that your best information is being put forward. And I tried to, kind of capture that with this blue, so you'd know what really changed. And I didn't want to track change it all because it's gonna be a giant mess. And so one of the things right here up front is everybody just wanted to have the compact language. So it was an important language. And I just grabbed it right out of the compact about how the board, upon the effective date, which occurred on September 17th, 2021, board shall be the exclusive regulatory body, on the reservation. So this goes through, just talks about your main charge. It seems like an important thing to have in there. Of course, you can change that if you want. I'm going to keep going unless you stop me. So there were some changes on the ex officio member to make sure that we had the U.S. Department of Interior, and hopefully we've got that correct now. This next bit, I really made this up based on things that I heard, and I expect that you might want to change this today, but there's a big desire to have a board expectation section. And what you see here is a bulleted list of things that I had taken notes about that you mentioned. Board members are expected to understand and implement the ordinance. That was like specifically, I wrote that down. Board members are expected to provide direction and leadership that promotes and provides for fair and consistent water administration and water conflict resolution. That was a hybrid of a couple of different members' thoughts. Again, encourage a change. Board members are expected to attend a minimum of, and this is highlighted, 90%, but that is in fact the number that was thrown around by the board members. So that is but since it's a number and a meaningful number, I thought I'd highlight. Board members are expected to read and prepare for each meeting attended. Board members are expected to complete assignments. Board members are expected to provide the service designated by any board position for which they are elected. I added that. It just seemed like something that should be in there because you have these positions. And it is an added duty to the point that maybe you will or will not consider additional compensation if somebody's in one of those positions. Board members are expected to provide for public participation, open meeting laws, transparency, and board activities. This is just a little laundry list of the things that, you're supposed to do when you wake up as a board member.
Yeah, just editorial on that. We can't really provide open meetings law. We have to comply with them. So it should say compliance with open meeting law.
Comply with public participation and open meeting laws.
Yeah.
Transparency of board.
It's a little broader than that because the right to know includes public's right to see documents, and that's not technically an open meeting.
Okay, I'm going
If maybe we're going to play with that a little bit.
to highlight comply. I'm going to change this all to comply instead of provide for. Although I do think that the fact that you rent this large auditorium and you have a bunch of chairs and internet presence and all that, it is almost more than comply. You are in fact providing, and this is an expectation, not necessarily a requirement. Just throw things there. But we'll revisit that. You have some specific language. You can just shoot that right to me. I mean, that'd be the best way to get it right in there. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So I just want to back up to the 90%.
Yep.
And here there's maybe a quick discussion on why 90, that's. I mean, we have what, 12 meetings a year, right? That would be official board meetings, if we don't add more. So that's. So you can only miss one, right? One meeting?
Yeah, one meeting.
Again, I was maybe focus more on I highlighted it because I thought.
Yeah.
So just, I mean, that seems like a high wall.
We'll see.
I understand we want
Yeah.
an emphasis to be here. And I don't know what it should be, but, I do envision this in at least one meeting, just for whatever reason that I can't predict right now.
Already laying the groundwork, very shape.
They took a lot of our expectation. For instance,
I
So-
think percent is incredibly high. Or then do we just cancel meetings when people aren't available? And so then
You don't have a meeting.
how does that work?
Yeah.
But I'm not necessarily in favor of that either, because we have a great deal of work to get done. We have so much work to get done. So I think we have to meet in the middle ground somewhere.
yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that if I think of Roger, like, Roger's so busy, you know, but his expertise is huge on this board, and he may need to miss more than one meeting. So I think 90% is too high personally, but I know it's subject to thought, negotiation, and a vote eventually.
Mr. Chairman. So I was just gonna say, I agree with all of the things that have been said so far, but all of this stuff in blue is new. We haven't seen it. Let's look at it, digest it, and get it back to Ethan with comments. I think everybody's on board with that percentage number that it needs to be revised. But I'd say a lot of this stuff, we can get back to the blue, we can get back to Ethan since it's new, but let's get into what we haven't addressed yet.
Yeah, look, yeah, say one more thing. I'm thinking instead of a percentage, make it more of a subjective scope. Attend as many meetings as possible, or something which is black and white.
Well, that's. Expected to attend board meetings.
I'll send you.
Board members are expected to attend board meetings. I mean, these are expectations, you know, it's not like you're gonna get
Just say
fired.
when possible.
Impossible.
Well, I think, I love that this language was added. I think anytime you outline expectations for success, you help people be successful. And so, I'm pleased with where this is headed. I've worked for a lot of organizations that did not do this. And,
I think it is a good section as well. Yeah. Overall, it's a good section. It's just that little, yeah, that's like 10 acre feet.
So, Roger, where do you want us to start?
Well, I guess let's just keep paging through it and see. I know we left off on where we left off last time was section 4.2, I believe.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just like give the highlights as I scroll down, okay?
Sure.
I did, on the vacancy of the board members, you all wanted this broken out more, plain language. I tried to provide for that here. The one question I do have, and I'm gonna ask you while we're here, is that should there be an acting designation for the fifth member? You don't have to answer that, but I do, the other four, voting members have actings designated, something about.
Where's that at? Page 3 and 19. I
Oh,
think.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, section 2.5 on vacancies of board members. Additionally, you know, maybe you're gonna look at it later or whatever, that's fine, but section 2.6. That removal of board members. Now, I have tried to make that reflect a one-step process. You'll remember there was kind of back and forth on whether that should be a one-step or a two-step. And of course, you know, as a person tries to draft things, it's possible I might have missed something. So your attention to see if that still makes sense, that you have somebody accuse somebody of misconduct or poor performance, and that really the whole process is all belong together. There's not a, well, did poor performance and misconduct happen? You know, and then we vote on that, and then we vote on whether or not there's a decision to remove. So I tried to catch what I thought you would need.
To me, it makes logical sense, but to me legally, it's not in the compact for the ordinance. Well, I don't think we can do that.
Well, you do have the ability to make bylaws to govern yourself. So
That doesn't include the ability to plan the governor or tribal council.
And for an additional clarification, when we get down here towards what happens if you do recommend someone be removed, everybody seemed to formulate a consensus around the suggestion that came from the state and the tribes. That language, which was removal of an appointed board member, in which if the board may recommend to an appointing entity the removal of a board member by a unanimous vote of the other voting board. However, to get to that unanimous vote, it is in fact still I tried to write that as a one-step process.
Okay.
And that one-step process ends in a recommendation to the appointing entity unless it is the fifth member,
Okay.
at which point it ends in removal. Okay,
And I'm comfortable with that.
all right,
So
so,
we're the appointing body.
yeah, for the fifth, yep.
Yeah.
And then there's also language in here on what happens if you can't agree. It cites back to that compact process about the fifth member. So, but again, you do not have a designated acting fifth member. Whether you could come up with that, I don't know, but be aware that in a tight quorum arrangement of voting board members, if a vacancy occurred for some reason other than misconduct, you'd still be in a bind, okay, to not have that fifth member. So, you know, it's something to be thinking about in terms of, you know, playing for the worst, hope for the best.
Yeah, I'm okay with the fifth member, not so okay with any of the other members.
On removal. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a recommendation. The appointed members, you are gonna, as a board, if you unanimously vote to recommend to the appointing entity, that's what happens.
Yeah, I'm not talking about acting or removal, excuse me. I'm just talking about picking an actor.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry.
Comfortable.
Yeah, the actings are designated in the ordinance, in fact, for the appointed members.
What?
The appointed members,
Okay.
in a vacancy situation where there's not a new fill-in, there is specific language designating who is the acting
Okay.
in that scenario. There is not in the ordinance designated language determining an acting fifth member. Sorry, explaining that with chewing gum in my mouth, but so I do think that it would be smart business to plan a contingency when it's not in a high pressure situation. What are we gonna do if Georgia, you know, for some reason has to become a vacancy, you know, in quick?
And like I said, I agree with that.
So, anyway, sorry to belabor that. I did not make any real changes to the board positions. This still has options of board chair, board vice chair. You know, option 2 brings in a combo, which is something was previously recommended of treasury secretary. Option 3 has a separate treasurer secretary. You did not come to resolution or give me direction on that last time. What happened is Clayton had requested some position descriptions for board members and was gonna get back to us. And I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, I just think it was, that's something that was being worked on. No changes in these black sections, of course, you should still read them, because just because we didn't mess with it last time doesn't mean you like it. Board, yeah, go ahead, Roger. Oh, I thought I was trying to talk. Board committees and or work groups, you did give me clear direction that committees are assigned by the board chair or vice chair in the absence of the chair, and work groups are composed of volunteers. Both must meet and operate consistent with the board's open meeting requirements. Okay, that's still gel. Okay, other than maybe you want to like take with the language, it's fine. Then we get into board compensation. We moved the ball a little bit on board compensation. I can see already that I goofed up and I didn't code this section of bullets in blue. I meant to, because those types of meetings were all already there. They were listed under different options. I got the sense from the board that all of those were qualifying types of meetings that will qualify for compensation. You all went back and forth about how long the meeting needed to be. I have provided you another concept in here that's highlighted in yellow, which says that there are exceptions to one meeting per day can be made by the board chair or vice chair, and that 2. Eligible meetings include a combined amount of meeting preparation and meeting attendance time of 3.0 hours or more. That's spaghetti I'm throwing at the wall for you. I don't know if that helps you or not, but
I got something to throw back.
okay.
Okay, so I spent some time since the last meeting looking over all of this, and what I'm gonna throw out would also affect section 3.1 in board descriptions. And I talked to Clayton about this after the meeting, and I felt that trying to discriminate between types of meetings, preparation time, going over or under any time allotted, this can get really complicated trying to keep up with for 5 different people. And wouldn't it be a whole lot easier if there's just a flat rate for board members serving every year? So that's as far as I can throw that. And I guess the discussion then, if people wanted to talk about it, would be what would be a flat rate, right? That would make bookkeeping a whole lot easier. And I thought too, in terms of optics, everybody gets the same, right? So,
Have a good time in Helena.
you could, but you'd pay for the other part of it, right? So, what do you guys think about a flat rate? I know Clayton liked the idea, but what we couldn't get to at the last meeting was what would be a reasonable flat rate. But there you go. Talk amongst yourselves, right? So,
I can tell you that there's a little bit of trouble with flat rate because the direction from the lieutenant governor to the state appointees was pretty specific that it was compensation by meeting. It doesn't mean that the lieutenant governor and or other direction from the administration might not change, but Helen, we got you.
Yeah.
Please, you mind?
Yeah, so the state and the tribe, we heard the questions that came up at the last work session about board compensation, especially in regard to Roger spending many hours in one meeting and then another meeting. And so the state and the tribe got together since then, and we put together some clarifying language about compensation, and we provided that to Ethan, but we didn't get it to him until yesterday. So it wasn't incorporated in what he sent out. So I don't know if you have that handy or not. I don't have it off the top of my head, and I don't want to paraphrase because each word was agreed to by both parties.
And you said that specifically to me, right?
Yes.
So that's probably.
Sorry, I didn't get it to you, sir. And if this doesn't answer your questions, we can go back and look again. We just need to make sure that the clarification we're providing is consistent with correction.
Okay. So if I'm understanding you right, though, Ethan, we can't consider a flat rate because that's not something the lieutenant governor agreed to. It would have to be something amended, he would have to amend that, right?
You know, I'm on a delicate ground here on this, so that's my general interpretation, but I'm not the end of your chain on interacting with the appointing entities. I don't speak on behalf of the lieutenant governor.
I think it's a good idea. And I think we wait until Clayton and see what he thinks about it.
Okay.
And maybe we approach tribal council, we approach the lieutenant governor and say, we think this maybe works better.
Easier, and it does look better to the public, I think.
What we're proposing in the flat rate.
Oh, okay,
Oh, it is.
okay, sorry.
So I'm trying to
But
get,
I can try and find it in.
I have it, I'm just trying to make the computer work.
And that always happens when you have people staring at you. Right? That's how that goes. So, well, thank you, Peggy.
Hopefully that answers the questions that came up.
Right, well, let's see.
Roger, do you have any thoughts on a flat rate?
And can you see section 4.2? This is what we're talking about, right, Bill?
Yep.
Okay, and so here, this is the message that we're discussing. And everybody read that?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna read that to you. Section 4.2, board meetings eligible for compensation, regular board meetings, special board meetings, board work sessions, board hearings, committee meetings, and work group meetings. Meetings with staff of the office of the engineer that may include interviews. That's okay, interviews, work sessions and technical assistance in project. Board members must spend at least 1.5 hours meeting with the office of the engineer staff to claim compensation. 1.5 hours. Participation in meetings, conferences, or other gatherings approved by the board. That's slightly different. I had listed approved by the chair or the vice chair. Board compensation rates. In 2002, the state and the tribe fixed compensation at a flat rate of $175 per meeting for tribal and state appointees and the 5th board selected member of the state and the tribe, and 10 the $175 per meeting rate to compensate for a board member's time spent participating in a meeting and preparing for it. The board on a biannual basis may review compensation rates and request the state and the tribe adjust the rate. Annual mileage, lodging, and meal rates are set by the state and the tribe. So I think what you meant by flat rate meant like once a year, you get a certain amount of money. So this is, that doesn't mean flat rate, right? This is by meetings.
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
I guess I was thinking flat rate by meeting.
Okay, sorry for that. Just trying to make sure that I have the right email up.
Yeah.
And so forth.
So when I worked for CSKT, they paid me a flat rate per year. And it came in bi-monthly payments. And it was just simple flat rate divided by 6.
No.
And it didn't matter how much work I did or didn't do, and I ended up doing a lot more than I thought I was going to, I still got that flat rate.
And were you technically on a retainer?
I don't think it was a retainer, it was just, I was a contract.
And I would leverage you harder if you were on a flat rate correctly. I'm more courteous of your time. Because you're limited.
You know, I'll weigh in now, I guess, if I can.
Please do.
So I think the thing they've got here, to me, is a viable option. I don't like the flat rate. To me, it's inequitable, you know? If one person works on 10 committees and another person works on one committee, then that's just not a fair compensation ratio. So I think what they have developed here, and if it's both state and tribe are on board with this, to me, this works pretty good. I mean, it's still not a big thing. And I'll tell you, the last time we had our meeting, I left my house at 8:30 in the morning and I got home at 8:30 at night. So it was a long day. And, you know, really there were 2 meetings in there. And we scheduled the 2 meetings so that we could save on travel. So I come back to this sort of scenario, to me, is sure, it's going to take a little bit of bookkeeping, but that's just what it is. I mean, it's no big deal. I'm on board with this.
I don't see how this is any different than what's in the bylaws, really.
It's not that different. The subtle difference is that I threw in 3.0 hours that would include preparation time. This seems to read to me, must spend at least 1.5 hours meeting with the office of the engineer. It's slight. It's not really, I don't think anybody's really gonna get upset about it. Yeah, it doesn't offer Roger that double meeting pay that he should probably got that one day.
It does, it's intended to.
Oh, it is,
Because
not
it's
limited to one.
It's per meeting, yeah.
Okay, oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so the, yes, the per day is not in this.
Oh, okay.
Subtle,
That's-
subtle but important.
Yeah, that's what it's.
Thank you for the, I needed to be helped along.
And also, yeah, on the 4.2, we tried to just make as few changes as possible to the language that we had for the last draft.
Okay.
So if there's, something like names of different types of meetings or anyway, fine tuning on that, please let us know and you can take a look at it. Like the gatherings approved by the chairman, I mean, I would need to talk to Arnie and Melissa.
Oh, I think this could totally work. I just was making some notes.
And our clarification of the 1.5 hours per meeting with the office engineer was to just ensure that a phone call wouldn't count as the 175. So something that's more significant than something really.
I would like to raise a question. And I would like to raise a concern, and I'm not implying anything. I just think it's important to think about this. When you think about who is appointed to the board, there is a desire and an expectation that each board member has a certain amount of expertise in a particular area. And that through that expertise, dialogue, and conversation, we reach better decisions, more informed decisions. There's also an incredibly high bar in my mind for transparency. And I think that board member participation as individual board members with particular areas of expertise can be beneficial, but there's also the concept of undue influence. And so I have to go down the road when I think about board members participating in work groups to the degree that the decision that comes forward from the work group is maybe limited. Maybe some of the options that might have been presented aren't fully there. So when I think about that participation And Roger, if you will allow me, I'll use you as an example, and I was thinking about you. And this, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but the day you had 2 meetings back to back, I wondered if you were participating in the work groups. Number one, at the request of the Office of Engineer, or for example, at the request of Seth Makepeace. And then I went to the situation in my head, then when people are participating and depending on who's asking, just for example, I thought if you're there as a resource specialist for Seth, then should that budget pay Roger's expense instead of our budget paying Roger's expense? And then I went to the scenario where, depending on how board members are participating, is there a particular situation where, due to a certain level of participation, there's either undue influence either on that end during the work group time or in the recommendation that comes forward? Do we get all the options we need to get in order to make good decisions? I don't know the answer, but I have pondered that. I've wondered about that. Then, so it depends on the conditions, I guess, under which you're participating. When you're participating, is your hat on as a water board member, or is your hat on as something else? I just don't know. And I think we should ponder that.
Well, you're looking at me, somebody say something. In the situations where I drag you in, and I've done it a little bit with each of you, I often Ken have not picked on as much, but I got something brewing. You know, I do have a tendency, like, as I'm getting to know you, I know some of your strengths and some of the things you can really help me with. It gives me both an opportunity to have some strength and an opportunity to have a more direct level of board member participation in the project, so that you see the project that I'm pitching to you. It's not just my pitch. Yeah, at least one of you was more directly consulted. Now the question is, well, in that situation, like I met with you on human resources,
Yes.
things, a lot of the things that you told me were meaningful. They did sculpt, because I don't want to meet with people without intention of taking in some influence, frankly. That's why I'm having a meeting with you, is to be intentionally influenced by you. I didn't have Shane come to the stock water thing, just start to be like, no, Shane, you don't know anything about stock. No, I had that because I wanted to be influenced by Shane's thoughts and so forth. But at the end of it, I am going to pitch something to you in this room under, the watchful eye of the owl, and you do all have to eventually vote on it. So I also think you're all pretty fair lot. Given that, can we remove all of the things that you're talking about? Probably not, probably especially not because I'm actually soliciting influence. But that's also why you're all on the board, is to come in and influence your executive arm to shape and shift that executive arm so that it does do what you think as experts in your field, as participants on the board, that you think is supposed to happen, and the check and the balance happens at the vote.
Okay, then, with that though, back to transparency. Is it possible, is it appropriate? I am not saying that it rises to the level of conflict of interest. I'm not saying that, but is it proper then, when something comes forward and a board member has participated in shaping it, to disclose that? I don't know. I just,
You mean from a committee perspective, like I was on this committee and now,
I was on the work group. We full disclosure, I was on the work group. We met for 5 hours. I strongly support the 2 options in front of you. We eliminated the 3rd option or something, but you know, it's just for transparency purposes and understanding it. I on the one day where Roger had meetings back to back, I wondered, I thought, well, is he there for us? Is he there for Seth? And it could have been Ken. Is Ken there for us or for Seth? Just, you know, how does it work? But
Quick interruption, I really gotta go.
Yeah.
It's a great discussion. I wish I could stay, but I don't wanna walk home.
no,
So before you adjourn, I'd just like to address Teresa real quickly.
I'm not adjourning, I'm just leaving.
Okay. So as far as my involvement with that board, I requested to be on that committee, assist on that committee at a board meeting. And Kate Clayton allowed me or appointed me to be on the committee, and it should be in the minutes. And I wanted to be on that, or I want to be on that committee because there isn't anybody in that work group that has ever done a development water right or been exposed to the DEQ standards for determining what amount of water is used and what amount of water is approved and what the process is. So my involvement is to try and guide this process along so that we come up with a legally defensible position on it.
thank you for that. And understanding, I understand that. That's the place I went. Because your skill set is so unique, Roger. Your experience. But I do believe at some point, and we may consider something in the bylaws that requires when we do committee work to have a report out or full disclosure or whatever. But I just think it's something for us to consider. At the same time with the bylaws, I've wondered, like, I have wondered about volunteering for tasks versus board assignments. And I just think that needs some thought. And I think we need to think about how we report out when we are advising committees. And then my last thought, I got territorial because I thought, oh, Seth's asking Roger, and now Roger has to be here for this long day, and you know, Seth should compensate it, you know.
We definitely can't have the tribes of the state paying the board members on the side. That's not gonna work out.
Okay, no.
All right.
And no little brown envelopes.
Right. But we can keep track and they can contribute more to our overall budget if we need to. I gotta make a small extra clarification because there's work groups and there's work groups. The bylaws specify work groups that are open meeting work groups. Sometimes I am dragging you to my office in the capacity of the office of the engineer, a meeting I was gonna have anyway, frankly. And if you didn't show up as a board member when you were invited, that meeting was still gonna happen. And as long as 2 of you didn't show up, I wasn't gonna put it on the internet. And it's not for any reason other than those are just developmental phases of a larger picture where we take care of the more administrative things that you expect to happen up in my office instead of here in front of the forum. Or even if it's not a forum, in front of the public eye for a formal assigned work group that we've designated here in the bylaws. And so I'm guilty of mixing the jargons, say word group and word group. But maybe you also have to throw like board, official board group or something in there and make it different, because, just a general sense of work group is thrown around, right? I mean, what people do.
Well, I just had a thought, I'm thinking, when we got started, we didn't have bylaws, right? And so as we were asked to serve on committees or volunteer on committees, the pattern I've seen so far is we volunteer for things where we feel like we have some expertise. Or we're asked to help out. And I think everybody's been operating in good faith and all of that, but I really appreciate your HR viewpoint, because I never look at the world through that lens, because I don't have to. But these are the things I think we do need to consider incorporating, because we're trying to create a document that will be used by people we haven't met yet, maybe 10 years from now. So, and I think that's the filter it's going through, not that you see that anything's necessarily been done wrong. It's just how do we craft the language so that when we communicate it to the public, it's communicated in a way that's transparent. So basically you're asking for us to put language in for what I feel we've done successfully already. And I know when we've been assigned or volunteered for a committee and something comes up on the agenda, we are asked to report back. So is that something we need to officially include in the bylaw? I just want to make sure I'm capturing your good thoughts.
I think we should include it in the, yes, yes. And I think we need to be sensitive to perceptions. It's just like the table on compensation, and it was this, from this to this, and as we all work through this. And you're right, Georgia, we're building, this is a system of accountability that others are going to pick up. You're right, after work out of here. So it just needs to be very clear, very black and white. And I think about it from an HR standpoint, but also generally from also a policy and practice perspective. And so, in defining our practice about how board members interface with this and interface with the office of the engineer, then I think we just need to a little bit clearer.
Well, I think a good set of bylaws tries to anticipate problems, right, and come up with solutions to those anticipated conundrums you can find yourself in. And that's a good point. So.
Well, I think that's a good point too, and I think it's different than compensation a little bit. I mean, the two blur together, I'm looking at 3.4, where it's talking about committees and their work groups and how, made by volunteering, duties are made by the board chair or vice chair and absence of the chair, committee members must meet, operate consistent with the board's open meeting requirements. And then you can say, and reports out.
Just add that.
To the greater board, and generally, if it's an open meeting, I think that's going to happen anyway, just like there were some minutes that we had and earlier today. I get where you're going with that we want a certain amount of accountability of committee members. Where my mind starts to wander, as you were discussing, as board members, if we can invite it to other entities, if the tribe invites us to a meeting, or the DRC invites us to a meeting, or FIF invites us to, a particular board member. That when we're invited, we're representing the board. And it gets to who's happy wearing that.
Yes.
So it has to be clear. And to me, this is where
Yes,
would talk with the chair,
yes.
and say, hey, I've been invited to XYZ
Yeah.
meeting.
And this is the language specific, so I dumped the state and the tribes thoughtful language that they sent in the email into the bylaws right now. I haven't deleted the next section. But it's highlighted, and it does have this particular line right there that does absolutely accomplish what you're describing, where participation in meetings, conferences, or other gatherings approved by the board. Yeah.
So, yeah, and to me, those invitational requests to go to some event, conference or something, that request would come to the board would figure out who's the best expertise to go represent the board.
Yes,
And then that would trigger
Yes.
compensation
yes,
from there.
yes.
The tough spot on this, I'll tell you from personal experience, is that sometimes you guys are hard to get together. And that is the part why I made it for the chair or the vice chair to
Yes,
approve, and if I was gonna put one in, it'd be that, because if you get an invitation tomorrow to go participate in the most prestigious water conference and talk about how excellent the board is, you can maybe get approval for that. Oh my God, you guys are back in April, which that's never gonna work for that particular. So,
Yeah, and I can I'll go back to Arnie and Melissa, and check in with them on if they have any discomfort with changing that to chairman.
yeah, or
'Cause I
by the vice,
totally see.
right, like, you do the same thing with signing checks, you don't approve your own attendance. You approve, the chairman can approve everybody, but his own, then if he needs to go, then he needs to get it approved by the vice chair,
Yeah.
right? And there's a check and balance system set forth, so I will, right then, does this language work for you, Roger?
The language that I think you should just incorporate what Pela provided you. Because it's
That's what I-
done, to me, it's been vetted by both the state and the tribe. And so I think, I guess to me, then that's their understanding and that's what we can easily operate under.
Okay, so I'm going to, how everybody feel about me deleting the other sections 4.1 and 4.2 in favor for what the state and the tribes have provided, with the caveat that we may try to change one small tweak, but we'll wait until we hear back from the state and the tribes. Can I push that button?
so the delete button.
There you go, it's gonna.
Yes,
Yeah, look at that.
And Roger, I just want to thank you too for your good comments there and clarifying, I think you made a really good point. When I look back over the last year, and plus that we've been working together as a board, we have really leaned on your specific experience a tremendous amount, and you have just been invaluable, and you're driving further than any of the rest of us. So we really have to consider that, and we have to think that future board members could be in the exact same situation you are. So oversimplifying it might work now, but it may not work in the future, so thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Georgia. I appreciate it. So.
yes, I know, I worried on the 2-day thing, because you have so much expertise. And you have put in more time than anyone. You really is.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad to do it. It's the very worthwhile cause. We're establishing something here that's never been done in the nation. So it's an honor to do this.
When you say that, then it's scary.
It is scary.
No, it is scary. It's like, you want to do absolutely the right thing.
So, and I think everybody's comments were pretty good about having some reporting back or some secondary oversight or whatever. So that's all good comments, you know, I mean, we're building something here for future board members, not just ourselves.
Future credibility.
I just want to point out, we're easing up on 6 o'clock, and I know all of you have to commute to Missoula, so.
Yeah.
How is everybody?
So Ethan moved to the language that Kayla offered.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, well, I don't know what you want me to do. You want me to keep working around?
Well, I want to give you guys a chance to speak up for yourselves. I only drive, 15 minutes. You guys have an hour and a half ahead of you. So how are you?
Well, Carrie's stuck. We drove up together, so she's. Well, I guess Bailey could take it.
I mean, you asked me to speak up, so well, it'd be helpful to get out of here at 6.
Okay.
But I will stay longer if we need to.
Right, yeah. I don't want to stay here till 7.
Because the routineness of this, I am gonna, maybe we might need to explore a day different than Thursdays. Because we start at 3, because of other, other commitments. It would be better if we could start earlier, which, the other days were, I think, Tuesdays and Wednesdays had some group, availabilities, and maybe I'm gonna send out another check. So that we can have less evening meetings, and I'll stay here tonight if you're willing to work.
Well, my schedule changes again next quarter, so that day I have Wednesdays completely open, every week.
And you're free on Wednesdays at 1 right now.
Yeah, so that shifts. Well, no, Wednesday.
And my schedule switches too, and my Wednesdays are now completely blocked.
We're impossible, aren't we? So, but yeah, that would help if we had just a work session and we just plow through it. We could find a day.
We don't start till the first week of April, right?
Right, first week of April.
Okay, so that means, except for next week, I'll be around all the time.
But you're gone.
I'm getting out of here for a week. I'm chasing the sun.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna do the spring break thing too. But we do.
We're all just trying to catch up with you, Roger.
I could linger a little on the bylaws, but the personnel policy will allow us to eventually start to get fidgety. We need paid time off. I'm almost at the point right now where I'm just letting people take it with the expectation that we're back to January with some sort of policy. So, because people gotta take time off.
You got live.
Anyway, so this next section, I am gonna get a little bit more out of you. So
Okay.
give me a second here.
Yep.
And we had an assignment to look at federal rates and compare those to state rates. We got urge from the state to use the state rates. But the clarification that the state mileage rate is pretty much the high end is what would be for us, where you don't have access to a state motor pool car, which is the IRS, it's the same as the IRS rate. The lodging is slightly different, and per diem is a little bit less for this state rate. My big ask is that we could all have uniform compensation for per diem and mileage for my staff and your staff. That's my big ask, like pick some and
Everybody sticks to it. Yeah.
yes, please jump in here.
Not it's piercing, but just you know what the limitations are, so we can reimburse mileage at our IRS rate, and then we can reimburse lodging and per diem or meals at the state rate. We just can't reimburse lodging and meals at the federal rate, which I believe is different from the tribe, which I believe is federal. So I wish that those could be the same, but that's just our limitations.
And then what I'm hearing, the easier way to go is the state rate, because it's cheaper. Am I
Well,
hearing that correctly?
I'm just meaning for the, I probably shouldn't have jumped in then, because I think that I mixed up what you were saying, Ethan, which was having the same rate for the board and staff. And what I'm speaking to is just the state representative and our half of the contribution to the appointed member.
But again, that's gonna divide it up. We have to choose one or the other, and we can't choose federal. because
It's a significant difference. The federal meal rate is like $64 a day, and the state meal rate is $30.50 a day.
So you guys are taking peanut butter and crackers on trips, so you can eat.
This is just for the board members. Is what,
So for 2 years, 2 years, we're gonna get the state rate,
2.5.
2.5.
Oh my God.
This is not,
So you'll be someone.
I'll be here to see, but sharing it with my friends.
But yeah, I believe that Ethan's request that there be the same rate for staff and board is entirely reasonable.
So do
I support that.
Yeah. If it means a lower rate for our staff, we can live with that. You know, I won't go on their mileage, and mostly because the mileage is at the IRS level. I wouldn't, that's something I can't. We don't have a vehicle. So for us, when people are using their personal vehicles for this office, like it needs to be that high IRS rate. So that's the one thing I can't really waver on, but it seems like that is consistent with state compensation. If these meal rates are what we all have to live with, I can do that.
When you're talking about IRS level for mileage, right?
Yes,
Okay, then are you considering a cap on those miles? For
employees,
amount reimbursed, yes,
not at this time, because we don't have any other vehicles.
okay.
The use of personal vehicles has been fairly reasonable. I mean, I'm not really talking about board members right now.
No,
I sort of shifted over to talking about personnel,
Oh,
so,
wait, no.
which is a little off topic, but, yeah, we use, anytime anybody hauls supplies or equipment or anything from town to here, that saves us, substantial, when we have to truck and charge and we don't have a vehicle. So those are times that we try to compensate for the mileage. They
Absolutely.
almost always, people are smart about it. They try to coincide their reimbursement miles with their commute miles, which I endorse entirely, as we said not to. Next week, one of the employees will be using a truck for the field work,
So this, I hadn't thought about this. I'm sorry I hadn't thought about this until you mentioned that today. And I'm stepping way out of anything I can speak intelligently about, so help me, my friend. But if you've got staff taking personal vehicles out in the field, what kind of liability are we exposing ourselves to? And how soon can we get something on the agenda for getting a vehicle for you guys?
Yeah, I think we have, it's not like it's an uncommon practice out in the United States for people to get personal mileage, or get mileage reimbursement for using personal vehicles for work.
But there are standards in some employment arenas that if you're going to award mileage, then you have to certify that they're properly licensed.
We
And
are
they-
building this,
And
yes.
they also have insurance
And we are building those into our policies now. That's actually one of the most tedious things that I'm dealing with. And that there's a sign off requirement if you get an infraction or something that you get so many
Yes.
points in your driver's license is compromised, that it can become an issue. And furthermore, that plays into, like, you still gotta show up here. So finding the right work is on you also, but
Wonder also about,
side,
about buying, frankly, AAA for employees. So if they're out in the field somewhere and they need to call somebody and somebody needs to come in.
Yeah,
Not all field work is created equal either.
No,
And there are, and we can talk about this later, I'm not trying to sidetrack us,
No.
but there are concerns associated with the type of work this office has to do that is different from other field situations.
we did upgrade our workman's comp for field going.
Yes.
That things I do that I don't really tell you a whole lot about. As a bunch of this behind the scenes stuff on making sure that our workman's comp covers, because admin workman's comp for office work is quite a bit lower
oh, absolutely.
rate than what.
So it is 6 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
yeah. I have a quick comment. So the next board meeting is April 13th. What about meeting on April 6th to pick up this bylaw stuff and whatnot? Is that, if everybody's going to be gone in March, would the 6th be a possibility?
I'm checking, I think that works for me. I just teach in the morning on Thursdays.
You're doing water commission training.
That's a Thursday, right?
Yeah, that works.
So is this instead of 13 or?
Now,
In
this is
addition
addition to.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
That works.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah.
I think.
Sweet.
I don't have a conflict yet on Thursdays, but I haven't got my schedule to.
I teach in the morning. On Thursdays.
And I typically get morning classes, but I never know until I get scheduled for this semester, which I
Got
have.
another 8:30. I got another
Oh,
8:30,
yeah.
but I won't be asking you to come in on that. So it works for me. Works for me.
Tentatively works for me,
All right, me too.
4-6, okay?
and I'll be working study,
Or
work.
6th.
At what time?
Okay.
What time?
So somebody's always, are you busy till 3?
I could be free as early as 1, I believe.
1 o'clock,
Yep.
Me too, probably.
okay? Probably 1 o'clock.
Yes, works for me.
You put a placeholder, invite
And then
you and
6
me
at 1, absolutely.
for
Okay.
6
Let's
at 1
start.
o'clock.
They're gonna get.
And then we also will have 3 o'clock meeting on 4/13. Yeah, 4/13.
Roger, does 1 o'clock work for you?
Yeah, I can make that.
Good idea.
Okay, I guess like Ken said, at 6 o'clock, I need to sign off also. So,
Let me just, look, one final item, if you would. Can I shift you all to direct deposit for your reimbursements?
Yes.
Okay, so that would mean I'm gonna give you a form you need to fill out with your bank account and so forth. And then I will also give you a spreadsheet that you're gonna fill out monthly, I think is where you guys were headed to. And so that way we can have a little more easy configuration. The spreadsheet will auto calculate for you, but still allow you to change things around if you need to. Roger, would that work for you?
yeah, it's great. Sounds
Okay.
good.
Okay,
I didn't want to waste time doing it.
I call this meeting adjourned.
All right, stay warm, you guys. Bye.
Yeah, stay warm. And what is the temperature there?
It was 78 today. It's gonna be in the 80 for the weekend, so. I'll see you.